I consider Aristotle the great enemy of humankind. I may be wrong, but I do. He's called the philosopher. And really, when we talk about the East and the West and so on, much of it revolves around how his work was received and what it amounted to, and then how it was incorporated or reincorporated into the Catholic Church through Aquinas and stuff like that. But I think at the heart of Greek philosophy, or the concept even of a republic, is this sanctifying, if you will, of the human intellect as the reason, a sanctifying of reason as the great engine of progress. And that's rooted in part also in I think, a dualistic vision of the world in which you divide everything. So you divide people, you divide us human beings into a head with a body. You divide the state into a head with the body, and you assign the value, the greatest value, to the head, and as what dominates the body, what generates order. And oftentimes, when you look at that kind of classification, the idea is that reason is a property that men have, that it's what defines and gives one the rights to become a member of a polis by virtue of having reason and a constitution that's governed by reason. And then the passions and the emotions are essentially the realm of women and animals and slaves, right? So this fundamental division is there, and it's, so even when we speak of democracies, when you look at, for instance, most of them, there hasn't been any until recently, the idea of the ideas of the state, which are abstractions from the human body, tend to serve the interests of the people who govern the state, and the state becomes the primary instrument through which society is ordered, and so on. So I think that whole, and then the individual becomes sanctified as well. And to me, where we are in the history of the world suggests that this architecture that has governed a lot of what we've done no longer, and obviously, does not ascribe value to life in its in the grander scheme of things. So, for instance, we're witnessing the extinction of species over the next decades by the millions. This is all coming from a vision that we have of ourselves, which you also see manifest in our homes, which is that we are abstracted from nature and even from each other and from other communities. And, I don't think that this level of abstraction, which shifts power into institutions that supposedly represent us, whatever those institutions may be, from the state to the corporation to the church and so on, I think all these forms of representation ultimately are forms of absence, which deprive us of our power and of our ability to judge and act and shape the world in which we live. And so I think that that's a big part of my critique, if you will, of democracy. Look at democracies, even American democracy. Women didn't have the right to vote. African Americans didn't have the right to vote. To this day, there are all these attempts to stop people from having the right to vote. Congress essentially operates as a casino that's governed by a bunch of, different tables for different industries, and they pretty much write the rules for their own industries. There's no, the entire concept of a trust that transcends the private interests of the individual constantly hits dead ends, until there are crises and emergencies, and then there's a little bit of a shift. But I don't think that the kind of consciousness that would sort of make a difference in terms of the collective life of the planet is one that can find an institutional home right now anywhere very easily. And maybe that's just the reality of it. Maybe, there's just a level of complexity at the higher levels to human organization that invariably entails bureaucracy and authority and state and, ratifications and all of this stuff. And I think that means that we're very slow to respond to crises and the larger crises. And that slowness is going to cost future generations massive, massive amounts of life and joy and so on. And so I don't think that, again, in a democracy where, you're a bunch of different interest groups, right? Where you have one interest group that's, I don't know, seniors or the elderly or pharmacies or whatever. I mean, none of these interest groups, in a sense, reflect the price or the value or the voice of future generations. They just look at the world through these very narrow prisms. And, that's really for me, it's a real cause for sadness. And then, so the truth of it is that, what democracy, I think, covers up and conceals is the accumulation of wealth and power in essentially the oligarchies who run elections or run the parties. And I don't think any of them, I think they're all very happy to run up all kinds of debts, moral, psychological, environmental, financial, and pass it on to the future through this invention of theirs, which is called time, right? Time is what creates a past and a future, and debt is, debt and the entire monetary system revolves around our ideas and conceptions of time. And I think of time as this kind of sickle that, turns and slashes and slices people. It extracts taxes and tributes usually from the poor and usually for the benefit of the rich. So if you look at the distribution of assets, or I'm going to be hanged as a communist probably, but if you look at the distribution of assets and resources and possibilities and so on, as as we move forward in time, I think that we've created a structure where essentially every corporation and every state tries to maximize its own benefits. And in maximizing their own benefits, whatever it might be, securing lithium supplies in the Congo or wood in Indonesia or whatever the asset, their ability to grasp the collective cost and damage of what they are doing is diminished. And frankly, they don't have it because, you try stopping an Exxon, or you try stopping some of these giant mineral companies, and by telling them, look, we need lithium, not just for electric cars, but we will need it for generations to come for all these other things. So at some level, the way I see the world is not through the prism of democracy, but through the prism of the periodic table, which is like this sacrificial shroud that is extended over all the planet. And then you look at every little block, like aluminum. And in aluminum, you have, on every little block of it, you have these little idols, corporations, right? Alcoa, or whatever the 3 or 4 companies that dominate the aluminum market are. And then you move on to, I don't know, whatever, gold, copper, zinc, and so on. And above all of these, we've created these idols. And each of these idols, it's this darkness, right? It's this darkness that we experience as a form of light in terms of the price of aluminum, how much is ready for the market and all of these things. And there really is no way to say to anyone, look, 100 years down the road, what will be left? I mean, look at the fisheries, for instance, the overfishing that we've seen. I mean, entire stocks of fish have, we've seen them collapsed off the coast of New England, now with the Chinese going to Galapagos area, all of that's happening over there. So without fasting, which is almost like a religious thing, without humans engaging in a collective fast of the deepest kind, where we choose to have the lightest impact on each other and on the planet, we turn ourselves into burial grounds, right? With advertising and everything. I grab a Coke, I do it all the time myself. I grab a Coke bottle, I grab a Lindt chocolate, I grab a banana, I grab whatever. And everything that moves into your body creates a reflection of your body outside on the planet, right? You're having too many bananas, some poor monkey is being displaced, as an example, or, land is being, you have Nutella and the Amazon is being cut back, or if you have beef, whatever. And I think that as long as we're not willing to see our own reflection in its absolute sheer horror and darkness, I think we will, push things to a point of depletion that really is not the kindest thing to do for others, even for dolphins. I mean, not even just humans. I mean, this is what I mean about, it's like, I think it's kind of cute to share the world with other, not just cute, but kind of beautiful to share, to understand that, we're not here to take everything with us or make everything our own, which is a big part of, all these theologies that the earth was created for us to rule. So I think that we don't have a sense of equity that's both, applicable to our own generation, but also intergenerational. And the reason we don't is because we're such hoarders. And the reason we hoard, whether it's we were hoarding food or money or water or gold or whatever, is because we're very insecure. We're governed by the idea of scarcity, not abundance. Because if you think that you have a lot of things, maybe I'm like this, I don't know, but you're not as eager to lock resources up and deny it to others. So, I look at the planet through, I mean, obviously there's a lot of good things that are happening. I'm not at all, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but as I said, when I look at the dark side, this is what I confront in terms of my own life. And, we're kind of, so when we talk about hope and change, it really does have to come at the most profound levels in terms of our consciousness, in terms of our bodies, in terms of our movement, in terms of our consumption, in terms of our emotions, in terms of our desire, what we define to be the the norm, the future, our future.